If you're really smart, if you're really wise about life, you would live life backward. You would live with the end in mind. If you're really smart about life and you want the happiest life and the best life, you would live life backward. I saw this on, this is funny. I don't know if you've ever seen, this is one of the shortest wills ever written. Being of sound mind, I spent all the money. And we read that and we think, there's a lot of truth in that. That's part of what makes a joke funny, right? Is that there's a lot of truth in it. And that is, we live our lives from day to day to day, and we don't think about the end of life. We don't think about dying. We try to put that out of our mind, and we spend so many days of our life trying to accumulate things and get more things. And this is hilarious because this is being a sound mind. I spent it all. I've chosen to live life backward. I'm thinking about the end and that I'm going to die, so I chose all the way along to live life differently. Now, I'm not saying that God says the best life and the greatest life is spending all your money, maybe giving a lot of it away. Well, we'll get to that in a later message. But what is true is that so many of us spend our days and we don't really think about the end, and that's why we have the book of Ecclesiastes. If you've got your Bible, you can open up there right now. What this whole message series has been about, and we're like in our third Sunday about it, is that you and I, we are going to die. Isn't this a great message? Aren't you glad you're here today? We are going to die, and what Solomon tells us, he calls himself the preacher in this book, is that you and I are going to die, and then after a few generations, no one is even going to remember anything about us. And if we would be wise and we would be smart, we would fully accept that into our lives, because it would totally change the way you and I live today. And his promises in this book, that he wrote it to help us, that God really does have a better way to live, a happier way to live, if you and I would embrace the inevitability of our death. In fact, I told you this, you won't truly live until you accept the inevitability of your death. If you can live with the end in mind, that you are inevitably going to die, then it can totally transform the way you're living today. So last Sunday, we talked about one of the big conclusions of that. So many times we spend our life striving for the good life, trying to take things that we have in our life, like our relationships, our work, sex, money, and we'll take all of those things and use them as stepping stones. Here's a picture of it. We tend to treat the things that are in our lives as stepping stones to get somewhere better. And if I was only there and I could only arrive in the good life, then I could finally be happy. And what we saw last Sunday is, just like the whole message of this book, that is a vapor. If you read the second verse, chapter 1, verse 2, the preacher announces all is vapor, all of human life. All that we think there is that we can hold on to, and you and I think that we can accomplish with our lives, all of that is a vapor, because you cannot hold on to your life. And the things that you do in your life aren't really going to last more than a couple generations, a few generations, and then you'll be completely forgotten. And so why do we take all the things in our life that God gives us and treat those things as stepping stones to get somewhere where we'll finally be happy? His advice is, be happy. Enjoy the life that God has given you as a gift, because here's the point. Life in God's world that he's created and also he has cursed, we're going to talk more about that today, is a gift, not gain. Instead of constantly trying to get to some place where I can be happy, I can actually enjoy each and every day. In fact, if I don't live with the end in mind, and that my life is not only short, vapor, but it's elusive, and I can't hold on to it, and I can't make anything that's going to last in this life, and I'm not taking anything with me, if I don't fully embrace that in my life, then I can go through life and I don't enjoy life as God's gift. And I don't enjoy my relationships, and I don't enjoy my work. I just always got to feel like it's got to change, and then I can finally be happy. So what we learned last Sunday is stop striving. Stop treating everything in your life as a stepping stone. Instead of doing that, enjoy it. So there's another aspect, another limitation of this life that we need to embrace as well in chapter 3. Now, when we get to chapter 3, these words are probably going to be somewhat familiar with you. They're oftentimes read at different settings, maybe some kind of speech that someone gives or a funeral or things like that. It was also a song back in 1965 from the Byrds. You may have heard it. They took most of the words of this, and actually there was a previous person that actually wrote the song, but they performed it and it became a really, really popular song. So this might sound familiar, but this is out of the Bible. This is like from 950 BC, from Solomon, who's speaking to us as a wise sage about this life and something we need to embrace about our limitations. You ready for this? There is an appointed time. Some of you have a translation that would say a season. There are these seasons, there are these times for everything. When you look at our human life and you look at this room and every one of us in this room and you look at our world with billions of people, we are all going through times. We're all going through seasons. And there's a flow to it, an appointed time for everything. And there is a time for every event under heaven. In this life, this is what Solomon's focused on. In this life, that's a vapor, we go through these times. We go through these seasons, and they come and they go. And they're inevitable. They're going to happen to every one of us. When I look in my Google Photos, maybe you use iPhoto, I don't know what you use, but I can scroll through all of these photos, and I can go back in these times of life. In fact, we have a little Google hub in our house that puts up pictures from the past in it. And sometimes I catch myself and I'm just looking at those pictures. I'm looking at my kids and they're just like tiny. And I'm looking back when I had hair and all these different kinds of things that I see. And you sit there and you look at those things and you realize, you know what, there's a flow. Time keeps moving. And there's different times for different events in our lives. We all face it. What are those kind of things? Look at verse 2. A time to give birth. And we know this from Ecclesiastes, a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted. You sow and you reap in life, don't you? In so many different ways and facets of life. Verse 3. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build up. These can be good and bad things, right? Happy things or sad things. But they're inevitable and they come and they go. In fact, billions of people are experiencing this right now in different times in their life, different seasons of life. Verse 4. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. You know, this month you could be crying. Next month you could be dancing. This year could be a hard year. Next year could be a great year. But it could be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And it's not just good and bad. It's not just the bad and then the good and then the good and then the bad. It's all of it mixed up in different ways as you read through this. There's not just the good and then bad, or what we like is the bad turns into good. But as you read through this, it's not that way. There's just these different times of life. Verse 5. A time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to social distance. What this first phrase is speaking of is probably wartime. There's a time when you sabotage someone's fields, but then there's a time of peace where you pick up all of those stones out of your fields and you grow your crops, and you have a time of abundance and prosperity, but then there are those times where it's hurting. A time to embrace and a time when, time in your relationships where you feel super close, and then there's times where you just can't be near people. Verse 6. A time to search and a time to give up as lost, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time where you just put your heart into trying to restore something and keep something and hold on to something or find something that's lost to you, and then a time when you have to let things go. And are these good or bad, right or wrong? Not necessarily. Sometimes the best and good thing to do is let something go, and you have to go through that time of your life. But what's inevitable is that you're going to go through all these times, that you're going to go through all of these seasons. Verse 7. a time to tear apart and a time to sew together, a time to be silent, a time when you can't get a word out of your mouth, and a time to speak where you just can't talk enough. And then it ends in verse 8, this beautiful poem. A time to love and a time to hate. With relationships, a time for war and a time for peace. A time when the world around you is just in an uproar, and a time when life is calm. And time goes by, and times come and times go. Seasons of life come and go, right? Now, what Solomon is writing this beautiful poem for is for you and I to actually reflect on this and take some time. Unfortunately, I've only got 30 minutes with you, 40 minutes with you, so we can't really let it sink in. But his point is, if we really think about life and we really embrace the limitations of life, we would understand that life is full of these ups and downs. Good and bad in the sense of there's times of great happiness, but also times of great sadness. All of these things are going to come in this life. And that's because God has created the world this way, and he's also cursed the world this way. A lot of this goes back to the book of Genesis, including death, including sin, including all the ups and downs. And the preacher knows about us. He knows something about us that we tend to just blow this off. We tend to not really think about life. But here's what he wants us to get. Your life is going to be full of all these changing times. There's one thing for sure. Your life is going to change tomorrow. There's going to be a different season that comes in your life. It's inevitable. And you know what's coming at the end of your life. You're going to die. The times are going to change, right? And then you're going to reach the end of life. Now, we tend to not take that seriously enough. We don't really let that sink in. There was kind of a pop song version of this back in the 90s. It's resurfaced again. It's become really popular again from Alanis Morissette. You ever heard this song, Ironic? It's a really, really popular song. The very first line in the song says, an old man turned 98. He won the lottery and died the next day. And she goes on in the song, isn't life ironic? Life has a funny way of sneaking up on you. This is the main chorus. When you think everything's okay and everything's going right, it sneaks up on you, right? And things go bad. Here's the next part of it. And life has a funny way of helping you out when you think everything's gone wrong and everything blows up in your face. This is kind of the pop song version of the same thinking. Life changes, doesn't it? And it just has this funny way of sneaking up on you. Like, why does it sneak up on us? The preacher knows something about us. He knows how we go about living life, and it is not wise, it is incredibly foolish, and it is not living life backward. We tend to go through life like a pop song. Oh yeah, the 98-year-old, he died. Isn't that's kind of a funny thing. You know, 98-year-olds are supposed to die. But what the song doesn't say is that the 28-year-old can die too. Isn't it funny how life just creeps up on you and things go for good or bad and just turns out, oh, isn't that kind of a funny thing? Well, that's not really life. So to break through this, because the preacher knows how you and I go about life, and it's in this song, by the way, he gives us a sucker punch right to the stomach. You ready for this? Verse 9. What gain is there to the worker from that in which he toils? See, a lot of people know verses 1 to 8. In fact, you'll hear them used all the time. It can even be in a song or whatever it is. But nobody wants to touch verse 9, which is the whole point. And that is, here we are as people, and we have all these times and seasons through our life. And there's billions of people on this earth, and they're going through all these times and seasons of his life. And now he says, now look at all of humanity, look at people. And when it's all said and done, at the end of our lives, are we in the black or are we in the red? That's the way we go about life. We toil trying to create a profit. So in the midst of all of these times, here's what he's getting at. Do you know what we do when the seasons of our life change and the times of our life change? Do you know what we do? We think that we're in control of everything, and we try to control everything. This is what he's trying to get at. This is what chapter 3 is all about. You and I, when we get caught in the times and seasons of life, we tend to think of the pop song version of it. Well, isn't that a funny thing? You know, things are going bad, and now they're kind of good, and they're good, and they're bad. Because every day I'm going about my life my way, and I'm in control of everything. But, occasionally, okay, it's just a funny thing comes along, and I'm not really in control after all. So what he does to give us a sucker punch is, he says, you're going to die. That's what this verse is all about. Do you remember back earlier in the book? You're going to die. And are you going to be in the black when it's all said and done? Because as you go through all these seasons of your life and you're toiling and you're trying to take control of life, and these seasons come along and you just want to let the good times roll and you want to be in charge and you only want the good times and not the bad times, and you think that you're in charge of everything, when that's all said and done and you've poured your life into that, do you really win? Do you really end up in the black when it's said and done? No, you don't. Because you're going to die. So this is the point. Okay, I may have just completely lost you. Listen to me. This is so important. If you're in control of your life, then why do you die? If you're a person that's so smart and has got everything figured out, and you think you can control all the times of your life and all the things that come in your life, and you're going to protect yourself, you're never going to have a time when you cry. You're never going to have a time where there's bad things for you, or if just everybody else could do what you wanted them to do, and you could be in charge of everything, then everything in your life would be great, and you can toil and you can pour yourself into that way of living and thinking. He says, if you're so great at that, and you're so good at controlling life, then why do you die? Who here wants to die? Anybody? I don't want to die. You don't want to die. So I guess I'm not in control after all. Do you see the point? If you're so great at controlling all of life and what's going to happen in life, then why do you die? Verse 10. I've observed this, the preacher's saying, the bad business which God has given the sons of men with which to busy themselves. When seasons come and go and these times come and go, I have observed what people do. I know what they do. They try to take control of everything. They think that they can be in charge, that they can turn everything in life to an advantage for them. And then they'll be happy, and then they'll be fulfilled. And they think they can keep on doing that, and somehow life is going to last forever. It's not. I've seen this. This is a bad business. This is a busyness that people pour themselves into, and in the end, it is vapor. It doesn't work. People who do this are never happy. You see, trying to control the times of your life is a vapor. Trying to control the seasons that are going to come in your life, it's an absolute vapor. I had the greatest plans for 2020 for my family. We finished the kids' building. I've told you this before. We finished the kids' building. I'm like, great, I don't have to do a building program again this year. We just get to enjoy having these facilities, and we're going to reach hundreds of people, and God's going to get the glory, and we're going to see people believe in Jesus for everlasting life and get baptized and be growing in our church, and we're going to have more small groups. It's going to be such an exciting year because we've worked so hard to get to this point. Now we get to enjoy these things. And this is supposed to be a year of a sabbatical for me, where you get a long extended break, and we put off our spring break, saving our money because we were going to go as a family to Hawaii and have this great time together. My son's a senior this year. He'll be off on his own life before long. We thought this is one of our last chances to all be together. We had all of these great plans, and then COVID-19 came along, and the church is shut down. Poof. My life changed. The time changed. A new season came into my life. And any illusion that I had that I was in control of anything, gone. I lost my dad. I lost my father-in-law. All the great plans that I had with my dad and all this, gone. I'm not in control of anything. One of the great ironies is I had been studying Ecclesiastes back in January and February. Maybe I shouldn't have been doing that. Because I was telling God, I got it. I totally got it. I am not in control. I am not in control. It is a vapor. It's a vapor to think that if I'm in charge or control everything and make all these plans and do all these things, then one day I can be happy and that's going to last. It isn't. So COVID came along, right? And this is a perfect illustration in our culture right now of this very point. What happens, here's some statistics just so you know. You're more likely to die today driving your car back home than you are to die from COVID. Fact. And not only that, there's a lot of people that die. These are the people that have died this year. In fact, if you die this year, it's 98% going to be from something other than COVID. Do you know that? But COVID came, and here we are in this world where we think that we can just control everything and have everything our way, and then life is going to be happy, and you're a baby boomer, and you're getting into your 70s, and then this COVID comes, and you realize, I could die. I could die from this. And what do we do as people? How do we respond? Do we say, well, there's a virus, and this is the time of a virus, and we need to, and guess what? There's nothing new. There's been a virus before, and there'll be another virus after this. And how do we respond to it? No, we take control, and we freak out. And we think we can just, if I do this, and I do this, and I do this, and I do this, and I do this, then I'm in control. People are so scared of COVID, even though we should be even more scared of driving down the street. But the reason for that is, and people will tell you this about people, it's because we feel like we're not in control. When I'm driving my car, at least I feel like I'm in control. But when there's a virus floating around there, then I'm not in control of that. And our response is to control, 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 control. And that's where Solomon comes in and says, you're going to die. You're going to die. And there's nothing you can do to stop that one day. So you're not in control after all. Do you see the point? He's not saying don't go about your life and don't live your life and that there aren't consequences to life and the choices we make don't matter, any of those things. He's saying there's a life to be lived, absolutely. He wants to help us live that life the best way, with the most life in it. So how do we do that? How do we live life backward? Look at the next verse. He's made everything. God who's put us in this bad business, right? Because of his creation and then his cursing this earth. And he puts us in this situation where we can feel like I'm in control and I'm striving to control, but that comes up empty, comes up empty, comes up empty. You put on a hazmat suit every day and you still get COVID. Right? You could. Because we're not in control. So what do? God has made everything beautiful in its time. He's also set eternity in their heart, in humanity's heart, in our thinking. Yet so that man will not find out the work which God has done from the beginning even to the end. God is doing a work that is going to last. God is doing a work from the beginning to the end. He's the only one that can see all of human history. He's the only one who can see all of the seasons of your life and my life. He's the only one that can put that puzzle together. He's the only one that has the big picture. Can you imagine putting a puzzle together that has billions and billions and billions and billions of pieces, and every day goes by, there's even more pieces to put together? You can't put all of that together. I can't put all of that together. But God knows all of those times, all of those seasons, and he's using them all to do something beautiful. Beautiful. He's a good God. And he's doing something beautiful. The New Living Translation puts it this way. God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He can put those pieces together. He's planted eternity in the human heart. But even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. We're created in his image, and we can think and we can reflect on this world, and we want to put it together. We want to feel like we could be in control. We want to feel like we could really do a better job than God. And we spend day after day after day living that way, and we miss out on life right now the way it could be with God. We miss it. So you can stop. You can stop trying to control because you're not God. You're not God. I'm not God. We're created beings. We are limited. We cannot understand everything that God is doing. Only He can understand it. So when I feel like controlling, I don't need to do that. God does that. And I can live in a new way. Who or what are you trying to control right now in your life? If you feel right now, do you feel in any way that if you could change something, then you could be happy? If you could just change this part of life? If you could just change this person? There's some of us in this room that think we know what every person should do. And if they just did what we wanted them to do and we could control that, then we could be happy. If you're caught in that, stop trying to be God. Accept your limitation. You're no good at controlling things anyway. If you're so good at it, why are you going to die? Right? There's another reason that you can stop trying to control. Look at verse 12. I know that there's nothing better. I hope this sounds familiar to you from chapter 2. I know that there's nothing better for them, for humanity, for us, than to rejoice, to actually be happy and to do good in one's lifetime. Instead of trying to control everything, why don't you stop trying to control all the people in your life? Why don't you stop trying to control your life circumstances? Why don't you just do good? That's what it means to do good. Why don't you let God be in charge of those things and actually enjoy life? Just like it's unwise to strive. It's unwise to control. Verse 13. Moreover, that every man who eats and drinks sees good in all his labor. It is the gift of God. Instead of feeling like life is something for you to control and then you can be happy, accept this brief life, this life that's in this time that's very short, that you can't hold on to, accept it as a gift and actually enjoy it. See, here it is. Stop. You can stop trying to control because life is God's gift to be enjoyed. And let me prove this to you. Do you know people in your life who try to control everything? My kids are like, yeah, it's Dad. Okay, it's the way we are. But do you know people who try to control everything through their life? They can have very manipulative ways and all kinds of ways to try to go about doing it, right? How do those people end up at the end of life? You know this. Miserable, unhappy people, grumps, who do not die well. Right? Some of you are like, I know him, I know her. Is that what you want for your life? Is that what you want for your family? Then stop trying to control. Accept your limitation. Don't play God. Don't try to be God. He's going to do something beautiful when it's all said and done. Trust that. Believe in that. And there's a final reason in these final verses. Look at verse 14. This is the hardest thing of all. What he's going to get at here is the hardest time of all in your life, when you're going to feel like taking control, is when there seems like there's something unfair that happens in your life. So he wants to say something about that. Look at verse 14. I know that everything God does will remain forever. The things you and I do, they don't remain on this earth forever. They don't last. What God does, He's writing history, right? There's nothing to add to it and there's nothing to take from it. For God has so worked that men should fear Him. You know, in a few generations, we'll be gone and we'll be forgotten. But God has made life that way that we might turn to Him, that we might honor and reverence Him. That's why He's put the curse on this earth. Verse 15. That which is has been already, and that which will be has already been. There's nothing really new. There's no toil. There's no control that you can use that somehow it's going to make everybody happy and your life completely happy. For God seeks what has passed by. And here's what he wants to get at. Remember earlier he said that God knows the beginning from the end. He knows the start and the finish. He knows all of human history. God also seeks what has passed by. God knows the past. He can reach back into the past and make it right. Here it is, verse 16. Furthermore, I have seen under the sun that in the place of justice there is wickedness, and in the place of righteousness there is wickedness. When I scroll through my Google Photos and I think back on my life, there are all these things in the past that are just the past to me. I can't change them. I can't truly make them right. I'm very limited with what I can do there. And furthermore, when we see injustice and there's wrong in our world around us, everything's corrupted somehow. Nobody ever gets complete justice. You try to get justice from one group of people and you hurt them, and then they're upset because they've been hurt, and you can just never, ever complete justice. What do we do in the midst of that? Instead of trying to control that and be angry and miss out on life, look at verse 17. This is it. I said to myself, God will judge both the righteous man and the wicked man for a time. Notice that key word again. For every matter and for every deed is there with God. Present tense. Let me explain this. You and I look back on our lives, and we can be so upset over things that are unfair. Look at humanity with billions of people, and there's been great injustices done to so many people in the world over time, haven't there? Terrible things. And we can't fix that. We can't make it right. In fact, we could never have a Supreme Court that's just perfect and brings perfect justice. Human beings will never be able to do what God can do. But God can do it because the past is like a present to him. The past, he can reach back and he can take all those things. And when we die and we're judged, he can make all of those things right. He can make it all fair when it's said and done. Only God can do that. So what does that mean? I don't have to do it. My inclination is when life isn't fair or doesn't feel fair is that I've got to take control. That's what we see in our culture right now, isn't it? We have this outrage culture. Here's some pictures of it. We see people that are, burn it down. Life's not fair. This is unjust, what we have experienced. And people, by the way, who are very, very far from God, instead of accepting their limitation and letting that drive them to God, that there will never be justice on this earth. You know, there have been rebellious people who've come and gone, come and gone. There's been all kinds of different politics, all kinds of different leaders, all kinds of presidents elected. It's going to change. And in the midst of that, there will never be perfect justice until Jesus comes again. And so that's what Solomon is telling us to embrace. Embrace that God will judge. God will judge. So even when life is unfair, and it was unfair to Jesus, instead of trying to take control, we can trust the Father. We can trust God the Father's plan, his big picture that something beautiful is going to happen when it's all said and done. So you're not God. And you don't want to miss out on life's joy of every day being a gift from God. And you don't need to try to bring perfect justice. You can't control that. You're not going to be able to do what God can do. Let go of controlling. Let go of controlling. That's the point here. Living life backward means that you stop trying to control. Who are you trying to control? Your spouse, your children, grandchildren. When you go to work, are you there to control so that then you can be happy one day? Or do you go to work and enjoy it as a gift? Do you take the wealth that God gives you in your life and you use it as something to control? And if I can just control it more, then I can be happy? Or do you enjoy it as a gift from God? If you live life backwards and you recognize that you're not in control, because after all, you're going to die, right? That's the point. So you're not in control at all. Your death proves it. then why don't you live life backwards? Why don't you live a smarter life? Why don't you live a wiser life? Why don't you enjoy life more and stop trying to control? James, the brother of Jesus, put it this way at the end of his letter. He was addressing a church just like ours, and he reminds these Christians of just what we're hearing here. And by the way, for those of you in the room, if you're new to Christianity, James was the brother of Jesus, and he didn't believe in Jesus, but Jesus rose from the dead, and he saw Jesus risen from the dead, and he believed in him, and he gave his life proclaiming that Jesus was Messiah. If you can convince a brother or sister that you're the Messiah, that's a good signal that you really are the Messiah. Do you know that? He's put it this way in his letter. Come now. Come on, Christians. You who say today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city and spend a year there and engage in business and make a profit. Hey, you Christians, and I hear you guys saying this, you're talking about this year, this next year, and all the money you're going to make, and you're going to go live somewhere for a year, and you're going to make a bunch of money, and you'll be able to come back, and you're going to have this huge profit. I got something I want to tell you, verse 14. Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. You're not in charge of the times and seasons of your life. You're just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. You got all these plans for this next year and all the money you're going to make and the great profit. You're going to be in the black. You're a vapor. Verse 14, 15. Instead, here's a different way to live. Here's how you live life backward. You ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also do this or that. I don't even know if I'm going to be alive next year. I don't know what business is going to be. It could go really, really well, but I could lose it all. I don't know what's coming. I don't know what the season is for my life. It's up to the Lord, and I have to trust that He has a big picture. I have to trust that He is painting something beautiful. I don't understand COVID-19. I don't understand it. I don't understand what God's doing in this world right now. I don't understand all that He understands. Maybe we're going through this for another group of people somewhere else to experience something else. I don't know. I don't fully understand it. But what I know is my life's a vapor, and I have to trust in the Lord. Verse 16. But as it is, if you keep on living a foolish life, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. It's bad. It's wrong. He says, if you try to be God, and you think that you're all in control and all your plans are going to come true, and you have the perfect strategy, the perfect way to handle everything, wake up. Because God is the one in control, not you. And when you live your life that way, you're missing life. You're sinning. You're wrapped up in evil. You're proud because you think you're in charge when God's the one in charge. So stop controlling. Stop controlling. When you learn how to play golf, I brought a golf club with me. I played golf since I was a little boy. We lived on a golf course even when I was a kid. I like to play, but I haven't been playing much lately. Anyway, when you first learn to golf, the very first thing you have to learn to do is how to hold the club. And you have to have the right grip. It all starts there. If your grip is wrong, you grip the club in a bad way, you can't even swing. You can't even have a good shot. So you have to learn to grip the club. You have to walk up to it and like you're giving it a handshake. And there's a certain way you put your fingers. There's different options there. But then there's also something called the grip weight. And when people learn to play golf, when they first learn to swing a club, one of the first things that they do that can go wrong is that they have a death grip on the club. They hold it so tightly. They just got to grab hold of it. And what happens when you do that is that all the muscles in your arms and in your shoulders and even throughout your whole body tighten up and you can't even swing well. And that's why most people, when they swing a golf club, they slice it and they hit it to the right. Or if you're left-handed, you hit it to the left. So there's a famous golfer. For over 40 years, he was one of the best golfers in the world, Sam Snead. And he's famous, and I learned this quote when I was just a kid. He said, when it comes to a golf grip, he said, to hold a golf club, as though you were holding a little bird in your hands. Have you heard this? It's a famous golf quote. So nobody likes golf in here. He says, imagine the club and hold it as though you're holding a little bird in your hands. Have you ever held a little bird or a chick? And so you hold on to it, right? But you don't squeeze it. You don't just hold on with the death grip. You hold it lightly. You don't just let go, but you don't crush it. And that's such a good picture for what Solomon's trying to get across to us. When it comes to the times of your life, Solomon knows us, the preacher knows you and I, we just want to crush it. We want to control it. We just want to hold on, and I'm going to steer this and make it my way. I'm going to do it. He's not saying don't live life. Life's there to enjoy. You can hold on to life, the life that God gives you. It's a gift from Him. Accept that gift. Hold on to it. But don't crush it. It's not yours anyway. God's in control. He has a good plan. He's doing something bigger than you could ever understand. And know that the times and seasons of your life, they are going to come and they are going to go. And it's a part of this life. It's a part of this vaporous life. So receive it as that. Enjoy it as that. And don't try to control it. Don't control people. Don't try to control all the circumstances of your life. You can pour your life into that and you will end up miserable and a total grump by the time you reach the end of life. Instead of that, enjoy life. Enjoy the happiness that God gives you. And part of that joy is realizing that you're not in control. Let's pray. Father, I praise you for this morning, for how your word just cuts through. And Father, forgive me, forgive many of us in this room because we go about our days and we try to control everything. We think we've got it all figured out. We have all of our great plans. And like James said, we need to learn to say, if the Lord wills. God, you're the one who's in control. We're not you. We are created beings. Help us, Spirit, to accept that limitation in our lives and actually enjoy that. Enjoy that we don't have to be in control. That, Father, you've got it. You've got it in your hands. So help us, Spirit, each and every day to enjoy life as a gift. And help us not to control people and the times of our life. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.